Hey there, thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to answer this frequently asked question about reharmonization. It's something I do every day. I love it so much, and gosh, it leads to such interesting things. I'm excited to share what I know about reharmonization with you. And it starts by just addressing what reharmonization is. You and I know that when we sort of marry a chord with a melody, it can sound so good. And those chords, usually the initial chords or the given chords or the expected chords, those sound normal to our ears. So the act of reharmonization is taking those initial chords, those published chords, the ones that the composer intended, or the ones that you're familiar with that you use all the time, and swapping those out, and in their place, putting a different chord. I've come up with a methodology that's a really kind of very logical way of doing that. And I want to share that with you. So there's a few rules that I've established. One is today, in this example here, I'm going to remain diatonic to the key of C. It's a big word for just saying I'm going to stay in the key. If this is the C major scale and all the chords that come from C major, I'm not going to use any black notes. I'm only going to stay on the white notes. The other thing I'm going to do to just kind of keep things basic at the beginning is I'm going to play a melody in my right hand and a chord in my left hand. And that chord in my left hand is really just going to be a triad. I don't need to do anything else to share this knowledge with you, at least the sort of the basic foundational aspects of that knowledge. And the rule, really the guide that is to my ear, and that will be to your ear, is that when I choose a chord, somewhere in that chord is going to be the melody note. And that way those two things can work together so easily. So with that, here's a demonstration. I'm going to use the sample for today. The example for today is Mary Had a Little Lamb. I'll play it up an octave. And I'll start with the harmonization, not reharmonization, with the harmonization. What do you and I expect? What is the normal chord? What is the given chord? I believe it's this, a C chord, and this, a G chord. Again, triads, root position, just to keep it simple for the moment, really to convey the idea. Sounds great. Change to G, change to C. Okay. I will take some license here and be quite liberal with my reharmonization. It goes beyond the context and it goes beyond the discussion of this particular lecture, but I want to share it with you and I want to give you an idea of really what can happen. I will stipulate on myself I will impose this rule that I will stay in the key of C. Here's Mary Had a Little Lamb, reharmonized. So, as you can see, it's a great deal of fun. In all sincerity, I could do that all day long. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it, I love it. All right, let's get down to the bricks. I want to share with you the basics of this approach. And so would you take a peek at the attachments? There are 3. Let's look at the attachment number 1 together. This is just a one-pager. At the top it says Exercise 1, Theory. Let's remind ourselves what is available to us. What are the ingredients that we have in front of us? Well, one of the ingredients we have is a melodic ingredient, and it's the C major scale. That's number 1 at the top of that page. Take a peek. I've put in between the staff 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. I've labeled the scale degrees, just using numbers. First scale degree, second scale degree, third, etc., etc. Below the staff, I've used solfege, or have written a solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. And Perhaps that's familiar to you already. Above the staff, I've put whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that's the formula, friends, isn't it? That's the formula for any major scale. We could start anywhere on any of the 12 different degrees, and we would get that sound, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, if we follow that formula. So one more time, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, sorry, and half step. And that's it, that formula. So a formula of whole steps and half steps, scale degrees, and solfege. Next line down, just a review probably for most of you, that if I take each scale degree and I build a triad on them, there's a certain resultant. Some of them are major, some of them are minor, one of them is diminished. Let's unpack this one. This is really fun. Here's the example, bottom of the page, exercise 1. Notice that I've put in the middle of this staff there and also above the staff the name of the chord. So the first one is C, the next one is D minor. Many people use D-M-I or M-I-N. That implies D minor. If you're in the jazz circles, sometimes rockers use D minus. You'll see that above the staff. E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, sometimes dim or sometimes with an exponent, that little 0 there, and then 1. Below the staff, below the left hand there, is also a very important point. And if you're into theory, this would, I think, will make some sense. But also if you're not totally into theory, this, to me, it makes a lot of sense to have a numeric rendering for what you're doing, for what we're doing. And again, that's so that this can be a transferable skill to any other key. Let's unpack this. The 1 is there, it's Roman numeral 1. Roman numeral implying a chord, harmony. And notice that when you go to 2, the Roman numeral is a lowercase 2. It's with the little eyes on it there, the 2 dots. Lowercase meaning minor. This is where we really reflect on, oh, that's a major sound. This is a minor sound. We'll need that reference as we reharmonize. Do I want to paint with minor? Do I want to paint with major? Do I want to paint with diminished? We need to know those flavors. 3, minor. 4, major. 5, major. 6, minor. Here's the, wow, that's diminished. Wonderful sound. And 1 is major. So I'll take a very brief pause here, and I'm going to ask you to pause the video, pause this little mini lecture, and I want you to review that first page. Review the C major scale. If you want to do the fingerings, great, you know, whatever works for you. But remind yourself of those 3 ways of thinking of a major scale. Because this lecture is about reharmonization, play the bottom a lot and really allow your ear to enjoy, oh, that's the sound of minor, oh, that's the sound of major. 1, 4, and 5 are major. 2, 3, and 6 are minor. 7 is diminished. What those feel like, what those sound like, that's the bread and butter for us for this discussion. So pause the video here. I can't wait to share the rest of it with you. Okay, let's keep going. We can unpack this second attachment, this second worksheet, this second exercise. It says, exercise 2, lesson at the top. I hope you're looking at that. Of these 4 staves, the top stave, as you read from left to right, is the melody. Should be super easy. The chord underneath of the melody is the given chord. That's that second line of music. The 3rd and 4th lines of music are alternate chord choices. But each of those choices, they are vertically lined up with a melody note, and that melody note is in one of those chords, is in one of those triads. So let's try this together. Here's the melody. Here's the melody with the second line. These are the expected chords. And what I did is I said, gosh, let's start this exercise together by harmonizing every 4 beats. Let's just use a whole note at the beginning of a measure. couldn't be simpler, rhythmically speaking. And so what I did is I looked at the beginning of each of the measures. There's 8 measures there. Looked at the very beginning and the note that happens at the beginning of the measure. And I found that of all of those measures, of all 8 measures, there's only 3 different notes that are being used. And they are those boxes, those vertical oblong boxes labeled number 1, number 2, and number 3. So number 1 has an E in the melody, and you'll notice that the 3 chords that are below it, the original and the 2 alternative chords, all have E in them. Measure 2 is also an E, so I skipped that. Measure 3 is this number 2 box, which has a D in the melody. And notice all 3 of those chords, the G chord, the B diminished chord, and the D chord, have a D in them. Measure 4 starts with an E, we've done that. Measure 5 starts with an E, we've done that. Measure 6 starts with an E, we've done that. Measure 7 starts with a D, we've done that. Measure 8, the last measure, starts or is a C. And below that are the 3 chords that have C in them. So let's look at these 3 boxes because they really, in a vertical way, show us what the alternatives are at that particular juncture. So if I start the song on E, I'm looking at box number 1. I have a C chord. I have an E minor chord. There's an E in that. And I have an A minor chord. There's an E in that. It's that simple. It really is just mixing and matching, really, finding a chord that has a melody tone in it. Let's do the second box. There's a D. You can see that the G chord has a D in it. You can see that the B diminished chord has a D in it. And you can see that the D minor chord has a D in it. And let's do box number 3. The melody note is C. The first chord has a C chord that has a C in it. The first alternate is an F chord with a C in it. And the second alternate is an A minor with a C in it. So I'll play this one more time. I'm going to play this with my left hand. I'm going to play the second line, which is this alternate chords. B diminished, E minor. Already, it's such a different sound, isn't it? Amazing. B diminished, an F major chord. Wow. Here's the third line of music. Oh, that's pretty, isn't it? D minor. I like this one a lot. So even though the chords are unusual and they sound different than the original, we can still feel that conjunct connection. They're working together. And lastly, on this first page, you'll notice that I've drawn some lines because I want some variety. We are creative thinkers. We're creative players. Let's have some variety. Let's choose a new path. Let's write a new set of harmonic changes, a new set of chords. Here's the beginning, following the line that I have outlined there. A minor, E minor, D minor, C, E minor, A minor, B diminished, back to A minor. Wow, isn't that unbelievable? I love it, I love it. It's just great. I want you to pause the video just one more time here before I continue on to the second page. Take the time to absorb this, to play this, to go through each of those things, the original, the alternate chords, the first alternate chords, the second alternate chords, and then also tracing that line. Go through that experience until that feels natural. I'll see you in just a sec. All right, let's look at that second page of the second handout there, the second worksheet. This uses the same premise, it really does. So you can see clearly the melodies at the top, the given chords are underneath of that, an alternate set of chords is under that, and an alternate set of chords is under that. I've abided by the same rule. If there's a note in the melody, it's gonna be in one of those chords. But you can see clearly that this has a lot more options because we've sort of bailed on the whole note idea, and now we are reharmonizing every half note, every second beat, or every 2 beats. It's so delightful. And I did the same thing, just to double check. I went from left to right, looking at the melody, and I looked at every note, every single one that started on beat 1 and started on beat 3. And I still found that it was mostly E's, D's, and C's. But in one instance, there's a G. And I've put a box around that, labeled it as number 4. You'll see that at the end of the 4th measure. So let's take a quick peek at that. This is the 4th option here. If the melody note is G, there are still 3 triads that could abide by that and be diatonic to C, right in the key of C. The first one is C. There's a G in it. The next one is E minor, the 3 chord. There's a G in it. And the last one is a G chord. That's the root of a G chord, okay? So any of those triads, any one of those 3 triads would work just fantastically over the note G. So I will play the melody, and I will play the alternate. I'll start with alternate chords 1 here. So already we hear this amazing sense of variety, especially here, because the chord is changing. And here, that chord is changing. Here it is with the alternate 2, alternate chords 2. Check this out, A to G, A minor to G. Kind of a cool thing. We're getting some variety. And I want to do the same thing. I want to play the same game, which is I wanted to connect the dots. I wanted to say, gee, I want to start with minor and then maybe go to major, or major then go to minor, or the 1 chord going to the 2 chord, or to 6, or to these types of things. I have this grid, this sort of matrix in front of me, which is great. I can make any number of countless combinations of getting from 1 chord to another. Here's one of them. I will follow the lines that I drew. So I start with the melody note E, and I'm starting with a C chord. I'll go a little bit slower so I can speak what I'm playing. C chord to F chord to A minor, back to C, D minor, all the B diminished, C, G, E minor, A minor, C, A minor, B diminished, C, F. I'll play it one more time without speaking, and so that I'm not tripping up myself and also tripping up your ears. It's awesome. And lastly, at the bottom of the page, there's a place where I have reharmonized using quarter notes. And basically, if the melody note is a quarter note, I use a quarter note chord. If the melody note is a half note, I use a half note chord. If the melody note is a whole note, I use a whole note chord. So I'm tracing the harmonic rhythm, as it were, of the melody. And instead of having this grid of crazy amounts of options, I know what my options are. I have them from the previous 2 examples. I just sort of cherry-picked what I wanted to pick, and then I created this example. So look at the bottom of page 2 where it says quarter note example, and it sounds like this. So really very, very beautiful. Okay, let me bring some summary to things. I would encourage you to practice. Put into practice. Do this. We can't just be observers. We have to be doers. For us as musicians, cerebrally, these things, they can make sense just like that. Boy, oh, I understand that. But to be able to get that from here to here, to be able to do it, just takes sitting at a piano. So I wanted this video to be very brief, so that you would have the opportunity to absorb what you need here, have those handouts, have those worksheets, and go to a piano and really just get down to business. It's a great deal of fun. To me, it's like a musical crossword puzzle. It's just like, wow, I have all these options. Which one am I going to choose? Really is special. There's a third handout, and that really is, it is labeled as a worksheet because it is a worksheet. And I want you to take a peek at that. So you'll see a page of the whole note exercise, and it's blank. So take a pencil and make your own line, or make a PDF of it and use an editable PDF with a online pen or whatever these things are called, so that you can use this multiple times to create multiple paths. There's an example for half notes, and there's an example for quarter notes too, where I leave the measures blank and give you that invitation to write them in. And I'll bring some closure right now by playing it one last time. And again, with your indulgence, I'm going to be quite liberal with the notes that I'm using in inversions and ninths and passing tones and all kinds of stuff like that. But I will stay in the key of C. I promise. All white notes, I promise. Here it is.